Hello everyone. I would like to introduce myself to you. My name is Eric Manley. Currently I'm a student enrolled with Full Sail University out of Winter Park, Florida. I am pursuing my bachelor's degree in music production. I hope to one day not just be successful within the music industry, but to be recognized as one of the people that has that certain whatever it is, that certain something that the big time artists are seeking. For today's podcast, I will be discussing a band that surely everyone has heard of, the Beatles. In 1966, they released an album called Revolver. This album was probably the first psychedelic-driven concept album that had a song cycle that linked all the songs together that pop music had ever seen. Are today's artists still influenced by Revolver? Most definitely. In the mid-1990s, that was the first time I remember hearing them, but there was a band called Oasis that come out of Britain, and they're still around. You can definitely hear the influence the Fab Four had on these guys. While doing my research, I was able to find a comparison on YouTube between the song Tomorrow Never Knows by the Beatles and Falling Down by Oasis. The psychedelic theme is definitely there with both songs, and the almost chaotic drum beat that Ringo Starr used on Tomorrow Never Knows is practically identical to the one that Oasis used on Falling Down. Two things I found very interesting here. The drummer that Oasis used for this album and this particular song was a guy named Zach Starkey, who happens to be Ringo Starr's son. Another thing that I found that really got my attention was that this album was also recorded at the same studio the Beatles were famous for using, and the same one they used on 1966's Revolver, Abbey Road Studios in Westminster. Now the Beatles, along with George Martin, their longtime friend and producer, and his sound engineer Jeff Emerick, all set out to create something that the music world had never heard before. You have to keep in mind the lack of recording technology in 1966. Take, for instance, the song Tomorrow Never Knows. John Lennon told George Martin that he wanted to sound like Dalai Lama shouting off the highest mountaintop. At first, George Martin was stumped by this request, but Jeff Emerick saved the day with his idea. He took a revolving Wesley speaker from an old Hammond organ and wired it through Lennon's mic, which gave him the desired sound they were looking for. Another innovative technique that this album brought forward to the music world was the team at Abbey Road had just created the use of ADT, or audio double tracking. When the guys from the Fab Four heard this, they fell in love with it and practically used it on almost every song on the Revolver album. This album was also full of very exotic instruments that had never really been used in pop music before. There was the use of the sitar and maracas and the theremin. With the song Eleanor Rigby, this song was the only song on this album that none of the Beatles performed on. However, all four of the Beatles contributed lyrics to this tune. The music that you hear for Eleanor Rigby is a score that was arranged by George Martin for a double-string quartet. The lyrical themes were set apart from anything the Beatles were used to doing. Their previous albums saw boy-girl relationship themes. With Revolver, they broke ground. Taxman addresses their distaste for the government and the government's greed. Yellow Submarine and Tomorrow Never Knows are both examples of the use of LSD and the desire to bring their experiences to the listener's ears. Dr. Robert is nothing more than a tribute to John Lennon's drug dealer. These guys constructed tape loops in their own home studios. In my personal opinion, Jeff Emerick did a magnificent job of incorporating these tape loops into the sound that you hear on Revolver. I love the way they took loops of drums or guitar solos and played them backwards in the final mixes. I mean, to me, that was just, it was neat. And you still hear it a lot in today's music. I don't know the song, but I was riding down the road the other day and I heard a backwards driven guitar loop on a song on pop radio. I guess one of the things that makes this album so innovative is the fact that the Beatles truly did use the instrument as a studio. I hope you guys have enjoyed my podcast, and if you have not listened to Revolver prior to this, please do so. Very great album, very interesting concepts brought forth to the music world in this album. Have a good day.